Our speaker is Lillie H. from Portland, Maine, and she was the top choice of our committee, and we truly enjoyed her story. So, without further ado, let's welcome Lillie H. from Portland, Maine.
Hi everyone, my name's Lillie and I'm an alcoholic. Wow. Well, I got to tell you, first of all, my sobriety date is November the 8th, 1989. My home group is the Scarborough Route 1 group. We meet at 7 o'clock on Thursday nights. We're a speaker discussion meeting, and it's a closed meeting, which means that only alcoholics may participate in that meeting. Let's see, what time is it? It's Sunday morning. It's 11 o'clock. I'm not hungover. I got all my clothes. They're all where they're supposed to be. Life is good, you know. I didn't come from a dysfunctional family. I know most of you do. At least that's what I hear, you know. I didn't. I came from the original Leave It to Beaver family. You know, I had 4 brothers and a mom and a dad. And my mom stayed home every day and cooked and took care of the kids and did all the things that stay-at-home moms do. And my dad went to work every day, and he came home every day at 4 o'clock. And every day he'd walk in the house. My mother would be doing the pre-dinner dishes, and he would say, "Hi, honey, how was your day? And where are the kids?" So nobody in my house was getting drunk. Every now and then my dad would bring home a quart of beer, and he would split it. Both of my grandmothers lived with me as a child, lived with us when I was a child, and he would split that beer between my mother and his mother-in-law and his mother. And that has never been anything that I can relate to, you know. A quart of beer and you split it, I can't even begin to imagine that, you know. But anyway, so they weren't alcoholics, and as far as I know, none of my brothers are alcoholics. They do, on occasion, which would be St. Patrick's Day, they do imbibe a little too much. And once they have had a little too much, they always gather around and say to me, "How come you're the alcoholic?" And I say to them, "I don't know, but I guess I'm the lucky one." You know, because really and truly, there are times that I'd like to dip them in alcohol and then bring them here so that they could get the 12 steps. But that's not my mission. My first drink was at the age of 19 years old by these kids coming into AA. My God, they started drinking coming out of the birth canal, you know. I don't know. But anyway, I didn't have my first drink until I was 19. The occasion was my wedding reception. I didn't know much about drinking, and well, let me just tell you a little story before we get to that day. At my senior prom, if your date was not a member of the graduating class, they could not go to the banquet. And so my date was from a different school, and so his parents said they would take us out to dinner. And my parents saved up. I didn't know I was poor until about 10 years ago. I didn't know I was poor growing up. I thought we lived in a village. Today, I guess they call it a project. But, you know, back then, we thought it was a little village. And my parents saved up, and they bought me this beautiful dress, and it had a big hoop skirt. And I didn't know anything about hoop skirts, but it was really, truly beautiful. And his parents come and got us, and they took us to this place called the Portlander, and at the time that was a very fancy restaurant. I'd never eaten in a fancy restaurant in my life. I mean, I came from a poor family. We once in a while would go get a hamburger someplace, but we never ever went to a fancy restaurant. They brought these menus, and they were huge, and they had tassels hanging off in them. And his father said, "You can have anything you want." And I opened the menu, and I ordered the first thing I saw on the menu, which was a filet mignon. And the waitress said, "How do you want it?" And I said, "Cooked." And, you know, and they brought this to me, and you know, I have to tell you that the first thing I did when I went in is they pulled a chair up for me to sit down, and I sat down on the hoop. So you know what happened, right? Dress goes up, and now you're trying to tuck it under the table, and they brought this dinner to me, and I just didn't think it looked like very much. I was like, wow. It was very pricey. But anyway, I went to cut the steak, and I had on these shoes that are very fashionable now, you know, the spike heels and all that. And I went to cut the steak, and when I did, it slid off the plate. And it went on the floor. Well, I didn't want them to think I was ignorant, so I sort of kicked it under the table. And then when his father looked at me, I said I was really hungry. And anyway, we had the dinner and all that. We got ready to leave, and as I stood up, I realized I had skewered that steak with the heel of my shoe. So I had to walk out like Groucho Marx. And 6 months later, I had a drink. And the occasion was my wedding reception. Another beautiful dress with a big hoop skirt, and honest to God, I really didn't know anything about drinking. My reception was at the VFW, and it later became the Sahara Club. And 29 years later, to the day that I had my first drink, I spoke at a meeting in that place. Anyway, my dad walked me up to the bar, and he said, "What are you going to have?" "I don't know, Dad. What are you having?" He was having a whiskey and ginger. And if you've ever drank in a service club, you know what that's like. You get a lot of whiskey and a little bit of ginger. And he said, "Here's to you." And what I knew about drinking, I had seen on TV. Lucy and Desi were having, cocktail party. And so I downed it. And the next thing I remember is taking my dress off on the front lawn. And that's right there, that was my first drink, and that's the way it was on my last drink. I was still taking my clothes off on the front lawn. And every time in between, I don't know how that happens. I don't know what possesses us to take our clothes off. But, if you're a drunk like I'm a drunk, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Anyway, I didn't start out to be an alcoholic. The man that I married was alcoholic. I didn't even know he was an alcoholic. How I knew he was an alcoholic, I told him, "You are going to come home every day at 4 o'clock. My father comes home at 4, and you're coming home at 4. And he did. He came home every day at 4. And he used to bring beer home with him. Now, he didn't bring a quart of beer like my dad. He brought beer. And how I figured out he was an alcoholic is he got up to go to the bathroom one day, and there was an outline of his body in beer cans on the floor. He used to sit on the floor. We had furniture, but he sat on the floor. I'm thinking, geez, maybe he has a drinking problem. And then he said one time, I overheard him. He was talking to his friend, and he said they were going to go out and do some serious drinking. And that appealed to me. I thought, serious drinking, that's my problem. I don't know how to be a serious drinker, because back then it would only take one drink and I'd be drunk. I'd be in a barroom fight. I'd lose my clothes. I don't know. Right from the beginning, And so I called his friend and I said, "How do you get to be a serious drinker?" And he said, "Well, Lillie, for somebody like you, you probably ought to coat your stomach before you drink." And I said, "Well, what do you coat it with?" And he said, "Well, a little vegetable oil." Well, I'm an alcoholic, and I don't know what a little is, so I drank about a half a cup of vegetable oil and then went out to be a serious drinker. And I just want you to know that if you haven't done that trick yet, you don't need to. It just makes everything come up a lot easier, But I practiced, and I practiced, and I practiced, Our marriage was doomed because he was alcoholic, and I didn't understand that even way back then, he would try to quit drinking, and I would think to myself, well, he's the one with the problem. I don't need to quit. We'd be going out somewhere, and I'd say, well, he's not going to drink, but that doesn't mean just because he's not going to drink, I can't drink. And it never occurred to me way back then that maybe I had a problem with alcohol if I couldn't not drink when he was trying not to drink. I was like, every man for himself. Too bad for you, more for me, And anyway, that marriage was doomed. But during the course of that marriage, we had 4 children, and we lost a child to SIDS. And when they went to get him, he was supposed to be at work, and they found him in a bar room. And I couldn't forgive him for that. It had nothing to do with the fact that our child died. It was just the fact that he wasn't where he was supposed to be, Anyway, we had 2 more children after that, and the marriage was just doomed. I mean, when you have alcoholic people that form together and make a marriage, and they're not sober, it's not pretty. And it was not, And on the last day that we lived together, we tried to kill each other. And that's where alcoholism took us, He was a raging alcoholic, and I was probably an alcoholic but didn't even know it yet. And I'm not proud of the things that I did, but I tried to kill him that night. I burned him with boiling water, and then I pushed him out a second-story window. And this was after he had kicked me in the ribs and broken 4 ribs and knocked my front teeth down my throat. And When the cops came, I was standing on the roof with a vacuum cleaner. I was going to drop it on his head. Because my thinking at the time was if I killed him, I'd get Social Security. Because it would have certainly been self-defense. And that's clearly the thinking of an alcoholic. I mean, Jesus, we don't just do anything easy, just get it, do it, kill him, Anyway, it became very clear to me after that divorce that he wasn't able to support me and the children because he was an active alcoholic. And so I also, being an alcoholic personality, decided I did not need him. I didn't need anybody. I would go to school, I would get a degree, and he could go to hell, and that would be that. And, I'll do it all on my own. And that's exactly what happened. I went to college, and I did a 4-year program in 2 years because I'm an alcoholic. No, the rest of you people can go to school from 9 to 2. I'm going from 7 to 5. And I'll do it every single day until I get out of here. And then I bought this house, because, again, if you're an alcoholic woman like I am, at some point in your life you had that big S on your chest. I'm Superwoman. I don't need you. I don't need you. I don't need you. I don't need anybody. I can do this all by myself. I can bring these children up by myself. I can buy a house. I can buy a car. I can do it all. I don't need you. Get out of my way and leave me alone. And that's the thought of an alcoholic woman. We're headstrong. Either that or we're a victim, and I never was a victim, ever, Anyway, so I bought this beautiful house, and now I'm going out drinking with my friends, and I've got these 3 children, and they're home. And I can't always find my way home. I can't always find my clothes, and I'm thinking, this isn't right, These kids should have a mother that comes home at night, And so I was thinking and thinking and thinking, like, how am I going to do this, And all of a sudden I got a really good idea. I thought, well, I know what I can do. I'll get a 12-pack of beer, and I'll strategically place it around my backyard. And when I go out to mow the grass, I'll mow. And when I get to a beer, I'll stop and have one. That's a lot of trouble to go to. But, I'm an alcoholic, so that's how my brain works, So I did that. And guess what? The yard looked great, and I drank all that beer, and I was where I was supposed to be. And my kids were in the house, and I thought, this is great. And I mowed the lawn every single day. Sometimes I would go out with little scissors and trim, I would hide the beer in the bushes and go trim around the bushes with scissors, because you got to earn the beer, you got to work your way around to one. And my life was beginning to become very crazy, I quit a job working for the federal government to become a saloon girl, because I thought that would be a good idea, The real reason for that is if you're a drunk like I'm a drunk, you've got to get closer to the booze. And when you're drinking as much booze as I'm drinking, you can't afford to pay for it all. So you've got to get a job in a bar room so you can steal it, And so that was my plan. And I got a job in a saloon because I really, underneath all of everything else going in my life, decided that I really wanted to be a cowgirl, And so I got a job in a saloon, and I dressed up like a cowgirl, and, you'd get the before the shift drink. Well, you'd get an after shift drink. Well, I never had an after shift drink in my life. I had the before the shift drink, the during the shift drink, the after shift drink, and oh my God, I'm drunk, But anyway, and it was about this time I was driving a 1972 Pontiac Ventura, and I had lost the front seat. And I don't know what happened to it. I honestly, to this day, I don't know what happened to it. But I'm here to tell you that what I had was I had a milk crate bolted to the floor. And on the milk crate, I had a pillow. And then I had another pillow up against to make a backrest. And I had a 2x4 jammed from the back seat up to that pillow to hold the pillow up. So now I had a seat. And I'm driving, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I get pulled over by the cops. And I'm thinking to myself, whatever you do, don't open the door. Because there's going to be a problem. If you open the door and he sees you sitting on a milk crate, I'm sure that's against the law. It never occurred to me that I was drunk and that was a problem. I'm thinking, he is definitely going to have a problem with me sitting on a milk crate, So, of course, he comes up to the car and he says, where have you been? I'm all dressed up. I got a cowgirl hat and a vest and cowboy boots and a skirt. Oh, I'm telling you. And he says, where have you been? And I said, do you want me to tell you the truth? And he said, well, of course we want you to tell the truth. I said, my horse died. Just come from burying him. And he was like, where do you live? I said, just up the street. He said, why don't you get there? You know? And that was the story of my life. I got pulled over. I can't tell you how many times I got pulled over. I can tell you a lot of the reasons why I got pulled over. They never arrested me. They never arrested me. They always just said to me, where do you live and why don't you get there? You know? So another time we're working in this saloon, and I was pretty loaded. It was very, very hot. And I got a good idea. I said, why don't we all go jump off the bridge after we get out of work? Now, I was so drunk that night that after my after-shift drink, I went to the ladies' room, and I couldn't figure out how to unlock the door of the stall. So I climbed under it. Came out and said to my friends, let's go skinny dipping. So we go up to this bridge, and we take our clothes off. Now, I have this habit by now of taking my car keys and putting them on the top of the passenger tire. I don't know why I thought of that, but, you know, I'm an alcoholic, and we know better than to leave the keys in the car. We know that much, you know. So anyway, we all get naked, and we jump off this bridge. I wouldn't jump off this bridge for $1 million. But drunk, I'll do just about anything. And it's a miracle that we didn't get killed, you know, because we went and looked at that another time. There's a lot of rocks down there. But, you know, 6 drunk people jump off the bridge, you know, being very quiet, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know how 6 drunks are. And the next thing, we see blue lights. And I say to my friends, let me handle this. I got a really, really good idea. They're like, what's the idea? I said, we'll swim downstream. So we swim downstream. We're sort of hiding out down there in the river, you know, and then we see the cops leave. So it's safe now to come out of our hiding place. And we sneak up through somebody's backyard. Now, remember, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We're 6 bare-naked people running up through people's backyards, being very, very quiet, mind you. And we get up there to the bridge, and the cops had taken our clothes. Now, one of the guys that was with us was married. And he says to me, Lillie, my wife is going to be really pissed off if I go home and my hair's all wet. And I said, well, Gil, I've got a really good idea. Why don't you get in the front seat and stick your head out the window, and I'll drive really fast, and you can blow dry your hair. So he said, okay, and we get in the car, and again, you know, I'm sitting on a milk crate, and we're going up the road, and he's got his head out the window, and the blue lights come on. And I say to my friends, let me handle it, right? So the cop comes up to the window. You know how irritating they can be, and like, you know, he shines his flashlight in the car, and there's 6 naked people in this car. And he's just standing there, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, it is really, really hot out, and we're just driving around trying to get cooled off. And he says, where do you live? I said, just down the street. He says, why don't you get there? You know, that's the way it was. That's the way my drinking was. You know, I'd get brilliant ideas. I would just get absolutely brilliant ideas. I'd be sitting at the bar, and I'd get a brilliant idea, and I'd decide to act on it, you know. And I realized today that the reason I acted so fast is because if I didn't, I would forget what the heck it was I was doing, you know. Anyway, on the night before my last drunk, I dyed my hair purple. I don't know why. Just seemed like a good idea at the time. And by now, I also want you to know that I'm working for a school department. Well, I was working at this saloon, tending bar, and I had the happy hour crowd. And they called one day from the school and told me that my son was in trouble, that he was selling marijuana at school. So I ate eucalyptus cough drops and drove up to the school drunk to see this kid, and I got a good idea, you know, like, well, if he's selling marijuana, I'm just going to call the chief of police and have him analyze it, and we'll see what's going on, right? And so then we had to go before the school board. And I said to my son, you come with me and I'll show you how to do this. We'll beat them at their own game, you know. And I dressed all up like Harper Valley PTA, and off we go. And we get to the meeting, and they're telling me that my son is the drug problem in the school. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He's like this big, you know. And I said, and furthermore, I had it analyzed, and it wasn't even pot. Ha ha. It was oregano. So there. Too bad for you guys, you know. Well, they didn't think too bad for you guys was very good. And this is being televised in the town where I live, you know. And I didn't think about that, you know. And anyway, they told me that my son, if my son was going to continue his education, he'd need to go to an alternative school. So I took him to that alternative school, and guess what? I started volunteering in that alternative school the next day. And a year later, they hired me to be the bus driver for an alternative school. And now, what I'm really driving is I'm driving like a 15-passenger van. And I decide one night that I'm an athlete and I need to buy a vehicle to carry my athletic equipment in. And so I buy myself a 23-foot stretch van. I immediately have an Uga horn put in it because that's an important thing to have. And I had a nice stereo. And what I really had for athletic equipment was a set of darts. And but, you know, I'm an alcoholic and grandiose, and so, you know, got to have this thing. What it really was about is I was terrified of driving drunk. I was absolutely terrified of driving drunk, and I don't know where that came from. I have no idea. But I knew that if you got arrested for drunk driving, it would be like this little blurb on page 5. But if I got arrested for drunk driving, it would be on the front page. Now, that's not true, but that's you know, I was like, I can't drink and drive. So now, in the back of this van, I have a bed, and I have a Coleman cooler, and I have a change of clothes, and I'm good to go. I don't need to go anywhere. I can do whatever the hell I want. And when I feel like a little weeble wobble, I'll just pull over and sleep wherever I am, you know. Well, the cops where I live have a problem with that, you know. But I would take the keys out of the car and put them on the tire, and they would come up and they would like, I'm sound asleep, right, in the van, and they rap on the window with their keys, and they're like, "What are you doing?" What does it look like? I'm having a little nap here. I'm having a little power nap. And they'd say, well, you need to get this vehicle out of here. And I'd say, well, you think I'm stupid? I'm not driving this vehicle. If I drive this vehicle, you get me for OUI. And the cop said to me, well, if you don't move it, we'll have it towed. And I said, well, as long as you're having it towed, why don't you have it towed to Wyndham? Because that's where I live. You know, it just never occurred to me that I was giving these people a hard time. But anyway, so now for my job, I drive a van, and for my personal pleasure, I drive a van. And now I don't know, when I wake up in the morning, when I come to in the morning, am I in my van? Am I in the school van? If I'm in the school van, did they see it parked at the bar all night long? And if they did, what kind of excuse am I going to have for it being parked there? You know? And I'm going crazy, driving myself crazy with, you know, keeping up with all this stuff, you know. I don't know what in the hell I'm doing, you know, but I get out of the van. Oh, thank God, I'm in my van. Where did I park the school van? Oh, yeah, that might be, yeah, that's in my driveway. I think I got to go over there and get that. And anyway, on the night before my last drunk, I dyed my hair purple. And I have no idea why I dyed it purple, but I did. And I went to the bar that I always drank in, and I told the bartender that I thought I might be an alcoholic, but I wasn't sure, and he should keep the drinks coming while I made up my mind. And sometime in the night, I remember saying to that man, I'm going to go out and ask God to give me a sign. If I'm really an alcoholic, God will give me a sign and I'll quit drinking. And this is what happened for me. You know, the very next day, I'm driving the school bus. I'd like to tell you that, you know, I didn't drink in the morning, and so your kids were safe with me. But the real bottom line is I didn't need to drink in the morning because I was still drunk from the night before. And I'm driving to work, and it was 15 miles across a country road to this place where the alternative school was, and I broke out in a sweat, and I thought, wow, I'm really having a hard time today. I thought I had the DTs, you know, and then I got a pain in my chest, a pressure in my chest, and I was like, wow. And then I just remember saying, you know, God, please don't let me go off the road with these kids in this van. And I made it to work, and I collapsed with a massive coronary. And I remember waking up in the ambulance thinking it didn't need to be that big a sign. And next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. And I'm on a gurney with a white sheet and a white pillowcase, and my family's there, and they had called my family members in and said that they didn't think I would survive, that I had had a heart attack, as you know, and that they suspected alcohol might have something to do with that. I didn't know that's what they told them, but anyway, I came to and I immediately thought, holy crap, your hair is purple. And I got this brother, you know, that's there, and he's like Mr. Little Goody Two-Shoes. You know, he comes over and he's like, sis, what happened? And I said, my God, I don't know, but whatever they're giving me is turning my hair purple, you know. And I knew it was a lie. I knew it was a lie. But see, if you're an alcoholic like I'm an alcoholic, we tell lies and we believe it. You know, we believe the crap we tell people, you know. And then I remember that doctors came in, and I had tubes, and I had monitors, and I had all this stuff. And I remember teams of doctors coming in and asking me how much I drank. And I told them how much I drank. And they did not one of those doctors said, well, do you think that's too much? So I began to think, well, maybe it's not a problem, you know. Maybe it's not as much as I think it is, you know. But this is what happened for me. I had that heart attack on October the 29th, 1989. I had my last drink actually on October 28th. But November 8th is my sobriety is the day I call my sobriety day, and this is why. I got out of the hospital on November 8th, and it was really cold in Maine, and I had taken this beautiful, beautiful home that I bought, and through the course of my drinking, I had destroyed it. I bought the house in 1975. It was pristine, and by 1989, there was no carpet left on the floor in the entire house. Because I was one of those people that, who cares, you know? I mean, one day a friend came to my house. I'm drinking a Bloody Mary. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Would you like one? No, I'll have a cup of coffee. And I made her a cup of coffee out of tap water, an instant coffee. And I brought it in and gave it to her, and she dropped the cup on the carpet. And she was beside herself. Oh, my God, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. And on the way to the kitchen, I got a good idea. I don't even like that rug, you know. So what I did was I came back with a pair of scissors, and I got down on my knees, and I cut that stain out. You know, and I just threw it out the front door, and that was that, you know. And she left. She's never been back. And after that, it got to be a joke. You know, we'd all go party at my house. After the bars closed, we'd go to my house. We'd just cut up more rug. You know, until we got to the point where there was no rug anywhere in the house, you know, and you could put cigarette butts out on the floor and spill drinks, and who cared, you know. And so now it's November 8th. I'm getting out of the hospital, and I realize what a shambles this place is in. You know, you can't tell the clean clothes from the dirty clothes. The place is just a mess. It's destroyed. There's punch holes in all the doors. You know, it's 13 windows in that house. 13 windows had bullet holes in them. I don't know if I was shooting out. The neighbors are shooting in. I have no idea. And I did not even know that there were bullet holes in all the windows until I was 5 years sober. But here's the deal, you know, my house was so bad, and I knew it was bad, so I would not allow my family members to take me home. I got a friend to take me home, saying to my mom, oh, it's way too far for you to go, and to my brother, you know, you don't want to drive all the way up there. It's 17 miles up and 17 miles back, and I'll just get a friend that lives up there to take me. Okay, fine. Well, the real reason for that is because I did not want them to see the mess I had created. So I wasn't drinking around my family. I mean, I'd go to the mandatory family outing, but then I have to get out of there because those people don't drink like I do. You know, so I got to make an excuse. It's going to snow, the tires are bald, I'm going to run out of gas, you know, I got to get the oil changed in the car, I got to do 100 million things, and I can't stay here with you. And the real reason is I got to get to the bar so I can drink. So anyway, I got home that night. There was a note on the door from the bank. It was really, really cold that night. It was a note on the door from the bank. They were foreclosing on my house. I opened the door. There was no lights in the house. There was no running water. There was no groceries. There was no telephone. Everything had been shut off. No children. And I left, and I went to the bar. I'm not staying there. It's too cold. So I went to the bar, and I sat down, and I ordered a shot of tequila and a beer chaser, and that was my drink of choice at the end. And I got that shot, and I doctored my hand all up to do that shot. And I looked up, and there was a mirror behind the bar. And there had always been a mirror behind that bar. But that day, what I saw scared the hell out of me. I looked in that mirror, and I thought, oh, my God, you're an alcoholic. You are a helpless, hopeless, pathetic, drunk mother. Your kids deserve so much more than this. And I put that drink down, and I walked out of the place. And that's why I call that my sobriety date. I did not have a desire to quit drinking, let me tell you that. That's the only requirement for membership, and I did not have it. But I had people in my life that had a desire for me to quit drinking. And I went to work. I didn't know that you were supposed to stay home and recuperate from a heart attack. And so I figured, well, I'm not in the hospital, so I'll go to work. And I went to work, and there was a woman at my work that loved me very much. And she said, Lillie, I wrote you a letter, and I want you to go back home and read it. And I says, now? I mean, I'm at work. And she says, no, we want you to take the rest of the day off. Why don't you go home and read this letter? And when I went home and I read the letter, and in the letter she said that everybody at my school loved me, the kids loved me, and the parents loved me, and the other staff loved me, and it was breaking their heart to see what was happening to me, and she suspected that I might have a problem with alcohol. And the reason that she knew that was that she was a member in good standing of Alcoholics Anonymous. I wished I could say, I thought, well, isn't that wonderful? I thought, what a witch, you know? The hell is she but... So, I don't even know what AA is, and she's a member in good standing. Well, la-di-da, you know, what the hell does that mean? You know, a member in good standing means, you know, you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous because you say you are. You show up. You have a home group. You show up. You have a job in that home group. You do service work. You have a sponsor. You sponsor other people. Not just come and hang out and get sober. You know, come here and do something. And your life will get extremely rich. You know, it will get extremely rich. And if you're not doing service work, you're cheating yourself. That's my take on that. You know, if you're not doing service work, you're just cheating yourself, you know, because that's where the fun happens. But anyway, she was a member in good standing of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, la-di-da, you know. But she said, I'd like to take you to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, okay, I'll go. You see, that night when I went out and I got in my van and I said I was going to ask God for a sign, what I said was, God, please give me 1/10 of the faith that my mother has. And this is what happened for me. I told this woman that I would meet her for dinner, and then we would go to this meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as it got closer and closer to the time to go, I knew I wasn't going. Because, see, that's the kind of drunk I am. I'm sitting on the bar stool. You're going to move on Friday? You need somebody to help you? I'll help you. Try and find me on Friday. I'll be at the dump on the hump, you know. And so anyway... It got closer and closer to the time to go and meet this woman. I knew that I wasn't going to go meet her because I'm not going to. I'm not going to no meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know what it is, but it don't sound good to me. That 1/10 of the faith I asked for, I heard my mother's voice. She was nowhere near me, but I heard her voice say to me, if you're not going to go, call her. It would be really rude not to show up. Well, I went to the phone, and the phone was dead because they had shut the phone off, and that was back before you could get a phone every other week for somebody different. And so it never occurred to me to go to a phone booth and call this woman up. So I drove 15 miles to her house to tell her that I couldn't come. She said, come right in. I went in and sat down at the table, and she had a gift for me. It was all wrapped up. It had a big bow on it. And I unwrapped it, and I never want to forget. I could never forget, even if I wanted to, how I felt at that moment. Because there was a blue book with big white letters that said Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was sweating, and I'm thinking, how in the hell am I going to get out of this? You know, big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Inside the front cover, she wrote, to Lillie, my friend with love, may you someday know how important this day is to me. Fasten your seatbelt and welcome to the greatest adventure of your life, one day at a time. That's what it's been for me. I went to that meeting with her that night. There was this little old guy there standing outside. You know, you go down 4 steps into the basement of a church, full of smoke. Now, I don't get this because, like, one side of the room was non-smoking and the other side was smoking. So, like this room, you know, okay, all you guys over here smoke and all you guys over here don't. But wait a half an hour and come through that door and see what you can see. Not much, you know. Anyway, this little old guy stuck his hand out to me, and he's shaking all over, and I'm thinking, man, he's really sick, this poor old guy, you know. They got him standing outside. It's freezing out. He's standing out here, and he sticks his hand out to me, and he goes, welcome, you're amongst your own kind. And I thought, I don't think so, bucko. No. The next guy I saw was as tall as he was short. He had this great big belt buckle. It was right about my eye level. It said bullshit on it. Yeah. And he's got a big toothy grin and a shock of white hair, and he's going, "You just keep coming back, honey. Gets better and better and better." And people were laughing, and I immediately went to the front of the room and gave myself away as a newcomer because I smelled the coffee. I figured there had to be something in it. I didn't know anybody that was this happy that wasn't drinking, you know. And they went around the room and they introduced themselves, you know. And just this past week, my home group, we introduced ourselves at the meeting. And just this past week, they tried to vote that out. You know, they were going to vote out going around the room and introducing themselves. And I said, if it hadn't been for them going around the room and introducing themselves, I wouldn't be here today. Because you see, they went around the room and they introduced themselves. Now, I am sitting in the third row in the end seat, looking around the room thinking, well, I have sunk to an all-time low now. These people are all drunks. And I mean, now, this is a gal that's coming from the dump on the hump. This is a bar I drank in, you know. Kind of guys I drank with, they don't give a shit how much you drink, you know. I would pull the fire alarm. You'd all exit the building like you're supposed to. I'd scoop up all the money on the bar. When you came back in, I'd buy you a drink, you know. And but anyway, that thought went right out the window. Anyway, so I'm at this meeting, and they go around the room, and they're all introducing themselves, and they got to me, and even though you are a room full of losers, there is no way that I'm not going to be part of the crowd. So I'm Lillie, and I'm an alcoholic. And I was like, oh, my God, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, my God, I'm an alcoholic. And they said things like, keep coming back. I have a disease of perception. I thought you guys said, we need you. You know, because I looked around the room and I'm thinking, this outfit needs to have an exalted ruler. And I think I should try out for the part, you know. Because, I mean, I heard things like, you know, it's no organization and there's no kings and queens and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, man, they got to have an exalted ruler. You know, I should stand for that position. And oh, God, I was so sick. You know, I was so sick. Anyway, the next things I heard were, you know, get a sponsor, get a sponsor, get a sponsor. I was like, oh, my God. Then they had the 12 steps and the 12 traditions up on the wall. And I'm a smart alcoholic. I know like a lot of you are. You know, I read those 12 steps the first meeting. I picked and chose the ones I was going to do. And they said, get a sponsor. And so I picked somebody that I drank with because I figured I could just skip over 4 and 5. That was a big mistake. You know, I figured she already knew all the stuff I did. And this woman turned out to be the woman that saved my life, you know. I mean, as I said, they were foreclosing on my house. And I said to her, they're going to take my house away. And she said, Lillie, I want you to get on your knees, and I want you to think about the worst thing that can happen to you. What is the very, very worst thing that could happen to you? Well, I realized that it wasn't losing my house. You know, my pride might be affected, but people wouldn't let me be homeless. I still had a family that loved me. I had a lot of friends that loved me. So I wouldn't be homeless. So that wasn't the worst thing. So anyway, and then she says to me, I have an idea for you. She says, I want you to go to the bank and I want you to tell the manager that you're an alcoholic. And I'm thinking, what the hell is wrong with these people anyway? I mean, like, there's some genius thought that up. Go to the bank and tell them you're an alcoholic. That's really going to be helpful. But I went to the bank. And I said to the manager, I'm an alcoholic. And he said, we know. And I said, I would like to pay you back the money I owe you. And he said, that's the best news we've heard all day. We do not want your house. I knew why they didn't want my house. There was a lot of repairs needing to be done to that house. And then she said to me, tomorrow I want you to go inside the front door. I want you to clean the first 3 feet. Clean the ceiling, clean the walls, clean the floor, clean everything in that 3-foot space. If there's something in that space you don't want, throw it away. If there's stuff in there you do want, put it somewhere where you will be keeping it. And when you get done, put a chair in that 3-foot space and call me up. And I'm thinking to myself, well, there's another bright idea she's come up with. You know, what the hell, do they go home and study ideas, you know? But I did it. So I call her up. I go, okay, I did it. And she says, I says, now what? And she goes, the next 3 feet. And, you know, in a short time, I had that whole house cleaned up. But she knew. See, I'm an alcoholic, and she knew. if you're an alcoholic like I'm an alcoholic, we're going to try to fix it all today. And if we don't get it all fixed today, then screw it, it didn't work. You know, isn't that right? Screw it, it didn't work. I tried to fix it all today. It's still a mess. 3 feet. Do 3 feet. The next right step, 3 feet. I thought, I can't take it. I just can't take it, you know. Now I'm coming up on 30 days. Every meeting I go to, this sponsor says to me, call me in the morning at 6 o'clock. Not at 6:05, not at 5 of. At 6 o'clock, you call me up. And if you called any time other than 6, she'd hang up on you. I thought she was really rude, you know. But anyway, so I sat calling her at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, she'd say to me, okay, we're going to do a reading. Which reading are we going to do? She'd say, stick your finger in the big book, and whatever page it comes up on, that's the page we're going to do today. So that's what we did. We started working the steps immediately. I remember when I got to like the 4th step, I was just balking at doing the 4th step, and I said to her, I feel like I'm up against a brick wall. She says, why don't you do your 4th step? Yeah, why don't you go cram it, you know? Anyway, this woman was wise and wonderful, and she told me how to do things, and she took me through those steps, you know. And then I would call her up. I had a friend that got this guy that was a sponsor, and he was tough as nails, right? So I'd call my sponsor up and say, you never believe what Jim is making Tom do. He's making him do this. And she'd say, that's a great idea. Why don't you do that too? It took me a long time to figure out not to call her up and tell her what Jim was making Tom do, you know. Because I'm doing whatever she's telling me to do, plus what Jim's telling him to do, you know. Anyway, it's coming up on 30 days, and I'm thinking I can't stay here. You know, not only has she got me reading something every morning, she says to me, what meeting are you going to tonight? So I flip through the book. You know, I'm going to go to this meeting. She'd say, good, pick me up. So for the first 30 days, we'd go to this meeting, and every meeting we'd go to, there'd be this woman. She'd get up at the podium, and she'd speak. She'd say, and today I'm happy, joyous, and free. And I think, oh, geez, give me a break. You know, and she had a job. She was a greeting card lady at the store. She put the greeting cards in the thing. You know, one day I'm like in one of my alcoholic moods, and I go in the store, and there she is herself. You know, oh, happy, joyous, and free, sticking all these. And I'm thinking to myself, well, not today. She didn't care. She didn't care if I didn't want what she had. She did not care, you know. So anyway, I'm thinking, my best thinking at 30 days was I'm going to go get drunk today. As soon as I get the blood chip. At home we have chips. They're like white and red and green and blue. The red one's the 30-day chip, and I called it the blood chip. And I said, as soon as I get it, I am going to Charlie's, and I am going to get smashed. Because I just can't take it. I go to these meetings, and you guys are standing there. You're talking about booze all the time. Talking about drinking. Talking about glasses with frost running down the side, you know. Cunning and baffling and powerful and progressive and fatal. And I'm thinking, lighten up. Good God, you make it sound horrible, you know? So I go to this meeting at 30 days, and I have decided I cannot hang out with you guys because you're not having any fun, and I'm a fun girl, you know? So I get to the meeting, and this woman comes out. She gets up to a podium like this one, and she's got a Christmas tree on her head. And it's all lit up, and it's playing Jingle Bell Rock or some foolishness. She's got on a Hawaiian shirt. What I didn't know was she was the partner of the bullshit buckle guy. And she says, hi, everyone, my name's Ricky. And if I don't drink between now and May 1st, I'll be sober 15 years. And I'm sitting in the front row because they told me to sit in the front row, and I still sit in the front row. There's a reason why you sit in the front row. Because if you're an alcoholic like I am, you want to know, are they together? How did she get her hair like that? I wonder where she got that shirt. Does he know that he's got something stuck to the back of his pants? You know, because... So if you sit in the front row, you don't know all that stuff's going on. So I'm sitting in the front row right directly in front of her, and I'm Ricky, and I'm an alcoholic. And I holler at the top of my lungs, yes, you're crazy. You know, because I'm thinking, wow, she is like out there, you know, she got a Christmas. It doesn't bother anybody in this room. If it works for her, maybe it'll work for me. She's whacked, you know. So I started hanging out with this lady, you know, and I think I'm like about 90 days sober, and the bullshit buckle guy says, you know, if you girls were any kind of girls, you'd go in the hospital and visit Ernie. He's from up country, and nobody's been to visit him, and you girls should go and see him. So Ricky says to me, meet me at the main medical center tomorrow at 1 o'clock and wear a hat. All right. So I show up the next day. The only hat I have looks like a shark's head, and I have it on. And Ricky gets out of her car, and she has on a fish hat, too. Only hers is all sparkly. And she has a fish pocketbook. And I have been upstaged, and so, and Ricky is a trained operatic singer. And I can't carry a tune in a basket. So I say to her, listen, Ricky, I can't sing. My mother said that's okay. If you can't sing, sing loud as long as you know all the words. And I know all the words to Give My Regards to Broadway. She said, great, we'll sing that. Now, this was back in the day before they had the HIPAA laws and all that stuff, right? I mean, you could just go in and, where's Ernie? He's from up country. Oh, he's on the third floor. So we go up to the third floor and say to the nurse, where's Ernie? Oh, he's over there. We go in this room, and she says, we're friends at Bill W. Hit it. Give my regards to Broadway. Remember me at Harold Square, right? We get all done singing this song, doing his little soft shoe and everything. And Ernie says, who the hell is Bill W.? But I was willing to go to any lengths, We sang to every Ernie in the hospital that day. And I stayed sober another day, Another thing that kept me sober was reading those steps. And I could not wait to get to step 9. I had heard my ex-husband was in this program. I knew he owed me $135,000 in back child support, and I was going to stick around until he made his amends. It's been 23 years. I'm still waiting. He hasn't gotten to that part of his program yet, and it's none of my business, And if anybody had told me 23 years ago that I would make amends to him, I would have said, this is how they look. He's walking down the road. I'm driving a truck. I run over him. In a panic, I throw it in reverse and go back over him again. And then I get out and say, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. Well, it isn't how it happened, but in my world, that's how it happens, right? But in AA's world, it's like, no, why don't you go home and write him a letter? And I couldn't wait to do that assignment. I cannot wait to write this shit down. So, but then I get home and the phone's ringing, and it's my sponsor, and she goes, and by the way, Lillie, why don't you ask God to come and be with you before you write the letter? Oh, great. Okay, fine. So I do that. Now this letter that was going to be full of hate and discontent is like, I'm so sorry you missed it all. I'm so sorry you missed your children growing up. I'm so sorry you missed the hockey game, the Little League game, the graduations. She says, great. Now I want you to call him up and go have coffee with him. And I went, and she says, it's about you cleaning up your side of the street. It's not about him. And I never thought that I could do that, but I did. I went and met with him, and I sat down, and I talked about the stuff that I did wrong. How I couldn't be the wife that he needed because I didn't know anything about alcoholism. And I wasn't willing to learn. And I couldn't save that marriage because I didn't want to. I wasn't invested, and that was that was on me. That wasn't on him. I mean, some of it was on him, but I wasn't there to talk about what was on him. I was there to talk about what was on me. And I cannot even begin to tell you what a freedom that is. Because for years, I carried around hate and discontent for this man. I would kill that guy if I had an opportunity. I should have killed him when I had the chance, and I'm going to kill him now. And, now I go to his house and have lunch. I mean, that's like, you got to be kidding me, It's amazing. It's an absolute amazing thing, I'd love to tell you that everything in AA is all wonderful and hunky-dory-do, and you come in here and you get sprinkled with the gooby dust of AA, and everything's great. That was the other thing. I used to say to my sponsor, well, I am going to sprinkle my kids with the gooby dust of AA. And she said, the gooby dust of AA? What the hell is that? I said, like they'll get sober and they'll be so happy. And she goes, Lillie, there's no such thing as gooby dust. You got to work to get this. And mind your own business and leave them kids alone. I had 3 kids, and 2 of those kids were active alcoholics. One of them is 19 years sober, and as I stand here today, the other one is in jail. And it breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart that that's where he is. He had 10 years of sobriety, and he's gone back out, and he has fought, in and out, in and out, in and out. And the choices that he's made has landed him in jail one more time. And that's the hardest thing I do, is go visit him in jail. No mother wants to see their baby in jail, And I'm here to tell you that it's my belief that the hardest thing you will ever do in this program is watching somebody you love dying from the disease of alcoholism. And I know that to be a fact in my life. It's harder for me to watch this kid struggle than to bury another child. And this is what happened for me. In March of 2002, I was asked to speak at a convention in Cape May, New Jersey. Out of my 3 children, 2 of them are alcoholics. One of them is does everything he ever wants to be. I'm going to be a hockey player, and I'm going to be a Little League, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be that. One day he said to me, "Mom, I'm going to be a policeman." I said, "Oh, yeah, sure you are. I'm drunk." "Sure you are, right." And then he joined the Marines, and he was the Marine of the Cycle, and I got to get down there and see him lead the parade and dress blues. And then one day he said to me, "Mom, I really am going to be a police officer, And I said, "Yeah, great." And then he went off to Washington, D.C., and he got a job working for the Department of Defense. And his job was to guard foreign dignitaries, and he guarded Pope John the 23rd, and he guarded Mother Teresa, and a lot of other dignitaries. And he called me one day, and he said, "The greatest thing in my life that has happened today." And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Mother Teresa hugged me." And then I told him that I was going to speak at this convention down in Cape May, New Jersey. And he said, "That's terrific." He says, "I'll take the ferry from Delaware, and I'll come over and hear you." And so he came, and we had the most marvelous weekend. We ran along the beach of Cape May, and we picked up all these white rocks. And he's like, "Ma, why am I picking up these white rocks?" And I said, "Because your crazy alcoholic mother leads women's retreats. And I'm going to use these white rocks at a retreat. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I know I'm going to use them. So keep picking them up." Right? And then we raced to the top of the Cape May Lighthouse, and he heard me give my talk. And after the talk was over, he came up and he goes, "Mom, I didn't know that you could do that. What a wonderful gift. And you should keep doing that," he said, "because you touch a lot of people." And my son worked in Anacostia. He's now a police officer in Washington, D.C., and he worked in Anacostia. And that's not where all the monuments are. This is in a very rough section of Washington, D.C. And on May 1st, I got the phone call that no mother wants to get. Sammy died. And I talked to him on Monday, and he was dead on Tuesday. And I got that phone call at 10 minutes to 2 in the morning, and at 4:30 in the morning, I called somebody in AA, and I could not even get the words out of my throat. How do you get those words out of your throat? Your son is dead. And I could not, all I could say was his name. And by 5 o'clock in the morning, people from AA were at my house. And I'm here to tell you that, because I was involved in service in AA, not only just in my little home group, but at the area level and at the state level, everybody in AA knew who I was. And they all came, and the women in AA came, and they showed me how to stand up strong. They said, "Lillie, you got to be strong. You got to hold your head up. Sammy would expect nothing less of you. He would expect you to walk behind that casket with your head held high." And my son had a hero's funeral. All these police officers came from Washington, D.C., and they brought my son's cruiser, and it was all draped in black, and it was just an amazing thing. I mean, they had this honor guard that stood honor at his casket, and all these people came. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came. And my son's police partner came up to me and he said, "My God, Lillie, I've never seen anything like this." He said, "I've been to a lot of cop funerals," he said, "but I've never seen anything like this." He said, "I've never seen anybody with so many friends." And I said, "Yeah, well, they couldn't all come." And he said, What? And I said, well, they wanted to, but when they got here and saw all these cruises, they kept on going. You know, at the dump on the hump, those boys a lot of times have problems with the law. And today I'm not sad. You know, I miss my son beyond words that I could possibly say. But my life is not consumed with that loss. Because, you see, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And why that's important is because I have a sponsor that said, I want you to go to a grief group. And I went to that grief group, and the very first meeting I went to, there were 2 other ladies there. Both of them had lost sons. Both of their sons were police officers. One of them was 7 years away from her loss, and the other was 10. And they were bent over in grief. And it scared me to death. I thought, oh my God. I knew how bad I felt at that moment, but I knew that if I'm going to feel like this 10 years from now, I'm out of here. I can't do it. You know, I have a sponsor that's a really good sponsor, and she said, you got to go a total of 3 times. And on the 3rd time I went, these women were still so wrapped up in their grief that they could not even see daylight. And they're looking at me like I got 10 heads, and they're like, what is with you anyway? How can you be like you are? How can you be so strong? And I said, I have a really big family. I have a huge support system. And I know that to be true. I know that tonight, if I couldn't sleep for some reason, that it came into my heart and hurt me, that I could call you and you would talk to me. It doesn't make any difference. We're alcoholics and we're here to help each other. You know, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what difference does it make? When another alcoholic reaches out for help, we need to be there for them. You know, that's my experience. That is my experience. I don't know why I get to do this. I really don't. All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. I don't know why I get to do this, you know. I am as amazed that I'm up here, you can't even begin to imagine. Because I think to myself, how did a drunk fall off in a bar stool in Windham, Maine, and end up in Stamford, Connecticut, speaking to a room full of recovering alcoholics? How does that happen? Because I did not have a desire to come here and be with you. I did not. You know, I have a disease of perception. You know, at the very first meeting, they read how it works. The only thing I identified with is when the guy got to the chapter to the obnoxious. You know, I knew exactly who he was talking to. I have a great life today. I just sold that house that I destroyed. I completely restored that house because that's what my sponsor told me I needed to do. Guess what? I paid the bank back every penny because that's what you're supposed to do. You know, you walk in there after not paying a mortgage for a long, long time and say, I'm here to pay the bill, and they go, thank you very much. You know, it was a pleasure doing business with you. I paid that house off. I just sold it. You know, I take care of my mother. She's 94 years old. I'd like to tell you that, you know, when you get the phone call and they ask you to come and speak somewhere, if you really want to be honest, you have some ego involved in that. You know, it's like, oh my God, they want me to come to Stamford. That's great. Until it's time to come here, and then you're thinking, why did I say I would do that? You know, and then my friends at home tell me that I'm a circus speaker. And then my mother puts it all into perspective. She's 94 years old, and she says to me, inevitably, I meet with my sponsor before I come on a commitment. By the way, my sponsor today is happy, joyous, and free. Because I moved, I changed sponsors. And I now have happy and joyous and free for a sponsor. And she meets with me before I come on this, and she says, Lillie, you have a job to do. It's to go and let them know that AA is alive and well in the grand state of Maine. And I say, okay, I'll do my best. And then my mother says to me, she has said this every single time as I'm going out the door to go on a commitment. Tell me one more time, Lillie, why in the hell would they pay for you to go to Stamford, Connecticut to speak to a room full of alcoholics? I don't understand that, She keeps me right-sized, She is a hoot. She is a hoot. And she'll tell you what's on her mind, too, And I just want to end and let you know that I recently had some surgery that went very wrong, and I thought I was going in for a simple surgical procedure, and it ended up being an absolute horror show. I had every complication that you could have, and my 94-year-old mother took care of me. I couldn't move. I had to sleep in a chair, and my 94-year-old mother would bring my meals to the chair, And she was so worried. She wouldn't let me do anything, Don't do anything. Don't take the dog out for a walk. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do anything, And I thought to myself, what a miracle this is, When I moved in to take care of my mother was on death's door. I've now been there for 13 years, and I've taken such good care of her that she can take care of me. I have friends like Glenn, that's service work. He's out here taping today, He probably like to be somewhere else sometimes, but he's here doing his job, and that's another way of carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. That people that can't get to meetings can get a CD or a tape of somebody. And when I was newly sober, it kept me sober. I would listen to those tapes on Sunday morning and think, wow, those people are unbelievable. Just unbelievable. How can you stand up at a podium and talk about losing a child? How can you stand at a podium and talk about losing 2 children? How can you stand at a podium and say to people, I fell off in a bar stool in Windham, Maine in 1989, and it's now 2013. I have paid and restored the house that I destroyed. I live in a beautiful home. I have a swimming pool. I'm here to tell you that if you join AA, you might get a swimming pool. I'm also here to tell you that if you get one, you have to pay for it. It's been a pleasure to be here with you, and I want to end with this. I adapted this a couple of years ago. I was speaking in Canada, and I was so nervous waiting to speak, and I just sat down, and this came to me, and it's an adaptation of the Footprints, and it says, one night a man had a dream. He was looking down at the beach, and he saw a set of footprints drunkenly zigzagging in circles. Then he saw 2 sets of footprints, one large, one small, one his, one God's. Next, the small footprints stepped into the large footprints and began to grow. Then once again the footprints were zigzagging round and about with wild abandon. This really bothered the man, and he said, God, when I asked you for help, you came and walked with me. And God said, yes, I gave you the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and as you began to put them into practice, you began to grow. Then the man said, God, I don't understand. If I was doing the footwork, what happened? Why the wild zigzagging again? And God said, oh, my precious one, I would not abandon you after you learned the steps we danced. Stick around for the dance.